Global stratification and inequality involve not just people within a single country. It is also a worldwide pattern, with some nations far more economically productive than others. In our textbooks, we have what we call three worlds model. The first world made up of rich, the industrial, capitalist countries. The second world refers to less industrialized socialist countries, while the third world comprised the non-industrialized poor countries. In this model, according to Mashonis 2012, the capitalist West, which is the first world, and the socialist East, which is the second world, are against each other, while other nations, the third world, remain more or less on the sidelines. Changes in Eastern Europe and the collapse of the former Soviet Union in the early 1990s meant the end of the Second World and the usefulness of the Three Worlds model. The model presented a revised system of classification. According to Mashonis, it is not based on ideology or political structure, but on the economic development of countries. High-income countries, comprising of the 72 high-income countries, are those with the highest overall standards of living. These nations have a per capita gross domestic product or GDP greater than $12, while the middle-income countries, the 70 middle-income countries, are those with a standard of living about average for the world as a whole. Their per capita GDP is less than $12 but greater than $2,500. Low-income countries, on the other hand, the remaining 53 low-income countries, are those with a per capita GDP less than $2,500 and a low standard of living. Most people in these nations are poor. Now, going back to our question, what causes global inequality? According to Walt Rostow, there is what we call modernization theory. This explains global inequality in terms of technological and cultural differences between nations. Nations become rich by developing advanced technology, a process that depends on a culture that encourages innovation and change toward higher living standards, which has four stages. These are the traditional stage, the takeoff stage, the drive to technological maturity, high mass consumption. In the first stage, the traditional stage, people's lives are built around families and local communities. An example of this is we have Bangladesh. While the takeoff stage has a market that emerged as people produce goods not just for their own use but also to trade with others for profit. Example, we have Thailand. So the drive to technological maturity has the ideas of economic growth and higher living standard that gain widespread support. An example of this is the country of Mexico. Lastly, we have the high mass consumption, which has the advanced technology that fuels mass production and mass consumption as people now need countless goods. For example, we have the United States of America, even China, Europe, and some parts of the capitalist West. According to Rostow, modernization theory addresses global inequalities in a way where the rise of technology transfer and foreign aid by rich nations enable them to help the poor nations by providing technology to control population size, increase food production, and expand industrial output, and by providing foreign aid to support economic development. The second theory under this model has a view wherein the global inequality is the result of the historical exploitation of poor nations by rich ones. It maintains that colonialism created global inequality beginning 500 years ago, just like what we have discussed previously. Colonialism gives rise to rich nations and underdeveloped poor nations. This process continues today in the form of neocolonialism, or the economic exploitation of poor nations by multinational corporations. Immanuel Wallerstein's model of the capitalist world economy identified three categories of nations. First, we have the core, the world's high-income countries, which are home to multinational corporations. Next, we have the semi-periphery, the world's middle-income countries with ties to core nations. And lastly, we have the periphery, the world's low-income countries, which provide cheap labor and raw materials and a vast market for industrial products. How does dependency theory address global inequalities? It claims that three factors, namely export orientation, a lack of industrial capacity, and foreign debt, make poor countries dependent on rich nations and prevent their economic development. Andre Gander-Frank's dependency theory argues that countries in the periphery must cut the umbilical cord that connects them to the center if they were to become developed countries themselves. Now, let's proceed to our main activities. Having said and discussed what we need to discuss and explain. In this mode diagram, enumerate the differences and similarities between the two theories in terms of their solutions to global inequality. The first diagram is that we have modernization theory on the left, and we have the dependency theory on the right. So again, enumerate the differences and similarities between these two theories in terms of their solutions to global inequality. Next, we have another activity which is called the box of global equality. Here, enumerate more solutions program that address global poverty. Again, you just have to enumerate more solutions programs that address global poverty by identifying them. Just as simple